You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter, at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, Bob Harris, at Football Diehard. And our executive producer is on the line tonight, Kyle Dvorchak, at FF Kyle the Kid. Mr. Harris, what's going on, man?
Not much. It was I have to start out the show by saying I went to the Canton, Ohio for the Kings Classic draft. Some of the big names in the fantasy football world were there. And it was a great time, and in particular because in human form I met one Kyle the Kid Dvorchak. And first of all, let me just say, I mean, I know a lot of people think Kyle sounds young, sounds like but he looks even younger. He looks like he's 7. So he's got that going for him. It was, I kid. It was great meeting you, Kyle. Always enjoy when you can put a face to the voice, and hopefully we can do that again sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm just always worried that I'm completely delusional and I've made up the character Bob Harris because I need a father figure in my life. But you're real. You're in the flesh, and that's always sound to know. I also met some other great people there, and I heard the Kings draft went well.
It was very exciting. It was like a snake draft followed by an auction. One of those, for me, went better than the other, but they were both a lot of fun and very competitive groups, of course, and really cool. First time I've ever seen the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Sadly, I was unable to execute my plan of removing Jason Taylor from the room, but maybe next time we'll create the right diversion and I can pull that off.
Good, you had a good time. I saw you at the airport. Mike Clay was there. That was his first time too, right? So his first time.
Yeah. So a lot of guys there, you know, they just really had a great time. So that part of it is camaraderie. Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports and Brad Evans were the guys who put it together. And it's all the big names in the industry. Some guys that I had not met before, Pat Doherty from Roto World.
Nice guy.
Jim Coventry from Roto Wire. And some other guys that I have met in the past. Dave Richard, a guest on this program, was there. Great meeting him in person as well. Of course, Marcus Grant, who, I've talked with quite a bit before, but also meeting him, had a great time with him as well, touring the hall. So it's just tons of great people. Of course, our own guy, Gary Davenport, was there, and always great to see him as well. So yeah, a lot of good times were had. The excitement of the drafts is now over. We're ready to move forward and look at our next division.
Yeah, I got to ask before we get into the divisions. You guys were drafting on Saturday, that's correct?
Well, we drafted last night. Justin and I were in a draft in a best ball for Football Diehards. And that went extremely well, certainly for me. Justin, not so much. It was a horrible draft for him. I'm shocked that he even admits that he was in it. No, it wasn't that bad. It was a good draft. I picked the first overall. Justin was third. I know that's not your favorite spot, Justin, but in general, how do you feel like you came out on this one?
It was all right. Again, I mean, you guys know I like to draft wide receiver, so I tend to be in the middle or late so that I can attack wide receivers. But I ended up with DJ at 3, and then on the way back, Devontae Freeman, which I think Devontae Freeman is pretty stable there, especially late round 2. And then T.Y. Hilton ended up being my wide receiver 1, and Golden Tate, and then Jamison Crowder was my 3rd. So pretty good. I mean,
I like what I like about that is something, that we should talk about more is the, balance within the balance, right? You want a balanced roster, but you want balance within each position. Right. So I think when you get kind of a guy like a Hilton as your first guy, I mean, even with Andrew Luck, still a little boom bust at times, he'll have some huge games. But then you round that out with some Tate and Crowder, guys that we expect to be, highly targeted, high catch guys. So I thought it was well done on your part. And that Randall Cobb pick was pretty cool as well. That you got 9th round. I think that's pretty good value as well. And your quarterbacks were great value. You pulled a Harris move on your quarterbacks, the Rivers Ryan combo in rounds 10 and 11.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I think I'm noticing that, you're not really, when you take T.Y. Hilton as your first wide receiver. I mean, you need to be. It's kind of like he's in that territory where it's like I mean, we know what his upside is, but despite being, and now T.Y. Hilton, despite as small as he is, he stays on the field, which we love, but I think his production is going to be contingent upon Andrew Luck's right arm, and I still think that there's uncertainty there. So it's not. But when you get a Golden Tate and a Jameson Crowder, who I'm high on, I think you're right. You can't have it all. I mean, I have DJ, you get Devontae Freeman, 2 top 12 running backs, so you're good there. But you're not going to end up with the likes of a Michael Thomas or Keenan Allen or Devontae Adams when you're picking that early, because they're not going to be there on the way back.
Exactly. But I mean, you look at the numbers. Just looking at the numbers quickly on Hilton, Kyle. I mean, back to 2013, 82 catches, 1,083. 2014, 82 catches, 1,342. 69 catches, still had 1,100 yards that year, and then followed up in 2016 with a huge season, 91 catch, 1,448 yards, the 6 TDs. Look, 600-yard games, too, if you're getting bonuses for that. So with him playing with Luck, I feel fairly comfortable that it's going to be more boom than bust. Mm-hmm. But again, evening that out with some high catch total guys, I think is a wise move always, and you did a good job of that.
Bob, since we've last talked, not in person, of course, we met up, had a great time, but since we last talked on the pod, there have been a full slate of preseason games. Give me your 2 takeaways from this week in preseason.
More Freeman. Royce Freeman, that is. Look, this, Brad Evans, again, the conductor or the engineer of that train. I've been satisfied to be the conductor. I'm about to throw Evans out the window and take over the driver's seat on the Royce Freeman train. He looks like the real deal to me. I think some of the other things, look, I don't want to get too overboard on this, but Christian McCaffrey, my blind spot for Christian McCaffrey is growing smaller. I see more McCaffrey. I see you, Christian. I see what you're up to, young man. And it's increasingly appealing the more I see of him. And I don't, I think we all get, kind of where we have a little bit of a blind spot. You just say, I don't like the range that guy goes. I don't like where I got to get him. Watching McCaffrey, I think, is pretty encouraging, and perhaps that where I'm getting him window is getting much more open for me.
When we talk about him, he only had 117 carries last season.
Right.
How many carries do you think he can handle? I mean,
I'm not as many as Ron Rivera thinks he can, right? I'm not, but maybe if he bumps that up to 150, maybe they can get up into the 200 range. That seems dubious to me, but just his playmaking ability looks pretty damn good. I think North Turner offenses are known for, making heavy use of the running back as a receiver. We'll see how much time C.J. Anderson gets. We know what Cam Newton's capable of near the goal line as well as a de facto goal line back. So I think McCaffrey's going to be one of those guys who is going to live on making plays from midfield and out there. And based on what we've seen so far, he can do that.
Yep. Yeah. And I think with Christian McCaffrey, you're getting a discounted Alvin Kamara.
I can see that. I see that comparison. I don't know if I'm going that far, but I can see that comparison. But right now, look at it, 15th overall on last week of MFL 10s. I think that's growing on me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, give me your 2 preseason takeaways.
I think Josh Allen's looked better than we thought he was going to be, and I think it's with young quarterbacks, I'm an advocate of throwing these players into the flames. The Buffalo Bills are not going to be good. We talk about their offense all the time. We'll talk about them a little more tonight. I like Josh Allen and what we've seen. I like the comfort. I also like watching Patrick Mahomes climb the pocket the other day and hit Tyreek Hill, who just it was the throw. We know he has a big arm. We know Tyreek Hill is fast. I can't see this happening in the regular season, but again, the comfort was encouraging.
You don't think Patrick Mahomes can complete a long touchdown to Tyreek Hill in the regular season?
Oh yeah, well,
Hater.
I would hope he's going to be able to do it. I would hope that there would be some safety help and that Hill can't get by three defenders.
Might be typical with Sammy Watkins there and Travis Kelce there and Kareem Hunt capable. Look, I talked to Dave Scretta from the Associated Press, covers the Chiefs, just an hour before this very show, and asked him, I said, man, my guy Justin Lonero hates Patrick Mahomes. Hates the Mahomes. And he says, man, tell Justin to back off a little bit. Patrick Mahomes is what he is. He's going to throw those big touchdowns. He's going to throw some interceptions. It's all baked into the cake. And from a fantasy perspective, we're going to pay a lot more attention to the touchdowns than the interceptions. So Man, dial back the hate like 2 notches, Justin.
He's grown on. He's definitely grown on me, and that throw and catch in particular, and again watching him climb the pocket like that was a beautiful thing to watch. And also Kyle, Kirk Cousins did not look great at all. I know it's a tiny sample there, and he's got to get reacclimated in Minnesota. But look, the weaponry is around Kirk Cousins. He does not have a lot of excuses to fail, although the offensive line is not good by any stretch. From what I can gather at this point, still early, we're in August, but did not like what I saw from Kirk Cousins. Small sample. I did, however, I'll throw one more at you. I did like to see what I saw to James Conner in Pittsburgh. No Bell. Le'Veon Bell is, MIA. James Conner's a guy, good story off the field. I think that he's a hand. I think if you're going to invest in Le'Veon Bell in fantasy leagues, you're going to pay a premium. And Connor's a good guy to have.
All right, that will wrap us up for preseason coverage this week. Be sure to tune in next week as we come off of really the big week for preseason. We get the final dress rehearsal going into the regular season. Week 4, we won't be seeing much, so make sure you tune in next week. But right now, we have the AFC East. I want to start us off with not the Patriots, I guess. We'll go with the Jets. We're doing what we can, guys. But Bob, I guess which quarterback would you rather start for the fantasy receivers value? Because I know, unless we're talking DFS, you don't have too much faith in either Josh McCown or Sam Darnold. But who do you think is the best value for the receivers on this team?
The Jets are certainly buying into Sam Darnold, right? I mean, the momentum is there. It's going to happen. I think Coach McCown can be happy on the sidelines. The highest paid assistant coach in the NFL, watching and rooting for young Darnold to continue doing the job. This train has left the station, and as far as I'm concerned, it would take a major disaster in this week's game. So barring that, look, I think he can fuel the fortunes to the degree we want them. I mean, Robbie Anderson is a guy that I'm, invested in reasonably well. I feel pretty confident that Darnold seems to be making the adjustments and learning quickly. That's something that Jeremy Bates, the offensive coordinator there, talked about yesterday, how quickly, even losing the 3 days due to the holdout, he came in, he studies hard, but he's a quick learner and he's picking this stuff up. So I think I'm comfortable enough, whichever of them starts. We saw what those guys produced last year with McCown, so that's not even a concern for me. It's can Darnold do it? And I think I'm starting to think he can. And so not backing off those guys. I'm big in, I'm invested in Robbie Anderson. I'm invested in Isaiah Crowell. And I think Darnold can keep them both on schedule.
Again, like I mentioned with Josh Allen, I mean, you draft Sam Darnold out of USC round 1. I want to see him thrown into the flames. There's some nice pieces. The more I dissect the Jets offense, there's some pieces. I think they're going to have some balance on that offense. There's going to be highs and lows, like we'll see out of Patrick Mahomes as well, but there's no better way to learn, and basically in any profession, than to go in there, get your hands dirty, and I think that they got their guy. But time will tell. Time will tell. The Jets will be not that great. They might be better than expected, but I don't think they're going to be. They're not a playoff team, so why not play Darnold? You know what Josh McCown is. But let's see what we have in our investment. And I think that as time goes by, and I think we talked about this weeks ago, if there was one rookie quarterback that we're going to see, that is probably assured of a week 1 job, I think it might have been Darnold that we were talking about.
Justin, the Jets have their guy. Bob has his guy in Robbie Anderson. Who's your guy in this receiving corps?
It's Robbie Anderson. I mean, he's a headache off the field, but we're talking about a 6'3", 25-year-old. Did play 16 games last season, came damn close to 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. But when you look at the numbers, Jermaine Kearse had more receptions, a little less yardage, and the TD totals were similar. And we saw Jermaine Kearse in Seattle, so there is some talent in terms of wide receivers for the Jets. But it's Anderson. I think the upside's there. I think if you talk to anybody in the NFL world, they're going to tell you that Robbie Anderson is a talent. You can't teach size. He is 6'3", but he's kind of a pain in the ass off the field. And one wide receiver that I was really keen on last offseason, he did get hurt, was Quincy Enunwa. Enunwa's a player that I think we all want to see more of. And he's healthy. He's healthy. The weaponry for Darnold, not a lot of excuses there. He's got viable pass catchers. And I think it's going to be interesting, wide receiver core. And the Jets never jump out at you But when you look at this depth chart, you got to kind of raise your eyebrows. And they also added Terrell Pryor, who I think is, kind of stole some money there. But, we can talk about him later on.
I don't know that he stole some money. And by the way, I mean, you don't sell pains in the ass short, Justin. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I mean,
That's true.
You're working out well under the same circumstances. I'm a little concerned maybe that, Anderson might be facing some league discipline. We'll see about that. I'm sure we'll find out. But that's kind of baked into his ADP in my estimation. That's why his ADP's down a little. But I do like an awful lot too. He's a piece that's very useful, a great blocker, big body, as well as a good solid receiver who's capable of making some plays. The tight end is it's the deep end of the sea of mediocrity.
Right.
The Justin Lonero sea of mediocrity.
That's right.
Look, maybe we have some hopes for some of these guys, but look, Eric Tomlinson does not instill great confidence in me. Jordan Leggett, Neil Sterling. The rookie Chris Herndon has had a hard time staying on the field. Clive Walford, who we know from his days in Oakland. So that is like a puddle of mediocrity. They're all on its own.
Not pretty.
Yeah, not pretty. So we're looking at the wideouts here as the guys that we're interested in this receiving core.
Bob, any interest in the receiving back potentially in Bilal Powell, or are you sticking hard with Crowell?
All in on Crow. The Crow will fly. Again, this is something that's easily overlooked with him, and our friend Mike Clay from ESPN pointed it out in a piece he wrote. But Isaiah Crowell, over the 4 years of his career so far, over the last 4 years, has been targeted as many times as Bilal Powell as a receiver. So, and it's something that's overlooked. You just think he's a plot. He's the guy that they had Duke Johnson in Cleveland.
Yep.
That doesn't mean Isaiah Crowell can't be a component to the passing attack. And again, watching Marshawn Lynch rip that long run up the sidelines, given all my investment in him, seeing Crowell that one play we saw him before he was concussed, take it in for the touchdown. I was pretty pleased with that too. I think he'll be very busy. I was all in on Powell last year. Perhaps this is a case of me feeling a little bit of the pain of that. But I know he was the first guy in the game in the preseason opener, but I'm not putting a lot of stock in that.
Bilal Powell jumped out last season. I think he was one of the sole players that we liked on that vanilla Jets offense. But I agree with you. In terms of Isaiah Crowell, he's 25. Now, Powell's going to be 30 in October. But the Crow, where his ADP is right now, around 7, he's one of these players where if you're like me and you like to draft wide receivers early, I think you're fine with Isaiah Crowell. And like you said, Bob, he's going to be involved in the passing game. He's a banger. He played with Duke Johnson. We know what Duke Johnson's role is. But the fact of the matter is I think that Isaiah Crowell in this Jets offense is going to get the ball 18, potentially 20 times a game. So we like that. We certainly like that. I know there's been a lot of Lamar Miller talk this offseason. Same type of back, in my opinion. Going to be involved a lot, and what we're paying for here at a good cost is volume. Now, whether the game flows are, work to the Jets' best interest, I don't know that to be true, but if they can hang around football games, Isaiah Crowell's going to be busy.
Moving down south to Miami, you speak of game flow, and we know Miami could be a team in negative game flow a lot. And the 3 seasons before last season, we saw Ryan Tannehill. He averaged 2 carries a game, 36.6 attempts per game. Is he worth taking in your standard redraft leagues as a ultimate late round quarterback just based on volume, or will you have none of them, Bob?
I don't know. I have a hard time with him. I mean, he is the guy, though, that if you wait really late and you don't, your other backups are all guys you're not certain are going to have the entire season, or Joe Flacco, who, look, he's having a great camp, but not going to light any fantasy fires, in terms of enthusiasm. If you're down in that range, I think Tannehill is maybe a guy that you look at. I have a hard time getting excited about him. Maybe it's the fact he hasn't proven he can stay healthy. I am generally injury agnostic. I am in this case too. I have to say it's more, not having faith in him or that offense to date. And, we hear, we see, Devontae Parker already, hurt and struggling, and, I don't know. I'm not an enthusiastic endorser of the Ryan Tannehill as anything but a low-end quarterback too at the moment. Maybe there's some upside involved with that if you get him there.
He has not thrown for more than 300 yards in any of his last 10 starts. But it's a deep position. and we will talk DFS in season. I think that there's going to be weeks where you'll like the matchup that Ryan Tannehill has. I mean, he has shown mediocrity. I mean, 2015, over 4,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, just 12 interceptions. We'll talk a little about the offensive pieces surrounding him, but it's such a deep position in redraft where you don't need to go down that road, the Ryan Tannehill road. He's kind of in that Eli Manning, Joe Flacco, Dalton territory, shade above probably the Keenums, or maybe not. I'm seeing Sam Bradford. So it's such a deep position in redraft. You really don't have to go there unless it's like a 2 QB league where, you're going to have Ryan Tannehill. I want 3 quarterbacks, sometimes 4. Tannehill will fit the bill, but he's not a quarterback that we're going to go out and say, wow, I want Ryan Tannehill.
All right, Bob. I will preface this question with I am heavily invested in Kenny Stills in best ball. Now seeing is that they expect him back in practice this week, whereas Devontae Parker is a push to make the first game of the regular season. Is it Kenny Stills' season being the only possible guy to throw to, or are you still looking at Devontae Parker, maybe some sleeper Albert Wilson?
Look, in the draft, the Football Diehards best ball draft last night, Devontae Parker in the 12th round, I'm taking that flyer. That to me seems like a super reasonable price to pay for a guy who, if he turns into the guy, look, we've heard it every year. The switch is flipped. He's got his nutrition on point. He's in the playbook. He's the first guy in the building and the last guy out of the building, yada, yada, yada. And every year he's still just the guy we've seen. So I'm not putting a lot of stock in him at this point, but I got him in the 12th round, people. If he's still in your draft board in the 12th round, he's still the de facto wide receiver 1 there. We know what they'd like him to be. That doesn't mean he will be that. And something else I like to point out about him, I think he's the only player who has played at least 1 game in each of the last 2 years after being listed as doubtful. That's some toughness there. Guys aren't listed as doubtful for no reason. The fact that you get on the field the week you're listed as doubtful, that says a little something about a player. So yeah, the prices switch out. Look, Parker was going way earlier to start the draft season. Now he's not. And Kenny Stills, I think he's a great play. Going to be a very productive player. But as the prices swap, I'm going to be more interested in the cheaper of the two.
Interesting. I think Devontae Parker to me is one of these players where you're just tired of hearing about him. You really, 6'3" body. He's going to be a red zone presence. I feel like he cannot stay on the field. I think he's a monumental fantasy liability. Now, in terms of Kenny Stills, we're talking about a polished 26-year-old veteran at this point. And I think that he is essentially, in my opinion, a poor man's Marvin Jones. So I'm going to take Kenny Stills 9 out of 10 times there if I have exposure to either of them. Of course, Jarvis Landry is out of the equation. We're hearing a little bit of buzz about Albert Wilson. I don't know that he's a thing, but I will say this. If Danny Amendola can slide into the Jarvis Landry role, another guy that's constantly dinged up, Danny Amendola can be really, really sneaky. And if he's 75 to 80% of what Jarvis Landry did in Miami, you have some fantasy goodness for just about free.
Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald wrote that Danny Amendola is going to make us forget Jarvis Landry. I would like some of what he's smoking, Armando Salguero. That said, to think that, that Amendola won't be productive. I mean, and Justin pointed out the concern is his health and saying, now something my Sirius radio co-host Mike Dempsey does a lot of in best ball drafts. And by a lot of, I mean, he's in 150 of them, so he has plenty of opportunities. He'll go Amendola and Wilson both very late and, get that production from that position, the slot. But we are seeing Albert Wilson getting a lot of work on the outside. There's talk of him seeing time at running back, running out of the backfield at least. So it'll be interesting to see. They paid him a hell of a lot of money to have him, split the slot role with Amendola, I would say. It played both of them a lot of money to split that one role. So we'll see what they end up with doing with these guys. But I do think that's a viable strategy if you're going 18th, 19th round on Amendola. Amendola's price is climbing a little bit, so it won't be that cheap. But Wilson's is not.
All right, Bob, the biggest and most important piece in fantasy context on this team is Kenyon Drake. Really the only player on this team you have to pay a premium to get. And that's where the real risk comes in, is taking your first, second, third, fourth round picks. That's where your drafts can be broken and maybe not so much made, just as really avoid the bust there. Do you get the bust vibe from Kenyon Drake coming in with fresh legs midway through the season, or is he for real?
I think the Dolphins think he's for real. I think he's real enough to draft him at his ADP. Look, I mean, he averaged almost 5 yards a carry last year, coming in down the stretch. And maybe, made you realize that, I know Frank Gore said, I was working with him. I see why they traded Jay Ajayi. I don't know if I go that far, but I think he's a big playmaking threat. He catches the ball reasonably well. And he was the thing I kind of like about Drake is I've seen him work on the part of his game, obviously, that he was horrible at. One of the worst pass protectors of his draft class at his position coming out has improved greatly, is now a very solid pass protector, which keeps you on the field, which I like about him. I think he's fairly priced right now, and I'm not afraid to draft him where he's going.
I am in the same boat with you. 6'1", 211. I think there's room for concern when you pick up the seemingly ageless Frank Gore, who has looked decent. The guy doesn't want to go away. But I'm with you with Drake. And he's right in that Jay Ajayi, Lamar Miller range. I'm going to take him 9 out of 10 times over Derrick Henry. If you watch Kenyon Drake run, he looks efficient. He plays the part. He accounted for over 64% of the Dolphins' carries after Jay Ajayi left. So I think they want to get him the football. And he was getting 5 yards per carry in that span. So, I mean, they went out, they drafted a running back, round 4. Are they 100% sold on Kenyon Drake? I don't know that they are. There are some Kenyon Drake cynics, but
he's a little bit of a hothead. I mean, you wonder look, Adam Gase will ship you the hell out of there, according to Jay Ajayi, Jarvis Landry, no matter how good you are. So if you're not on the program, you're out of the program. So that's the knock against him, is he's a little bit of a hothead. And maybe that's one of the reasons Frank Gore is there, is to serve as a mentor, to teach him how a true pro does the job.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Frank Gore, Miami guy, kind of sail off into the proverbial sunset, I guess figuratively and literally. But we haven't seen a ground game in Miami, any sense of stability since Ricky Williams, it feels like. That said, Jay Ajayi had a damn good season. Lamar Miller's had a good season. They've both been shipped out. So this might be one of these seasons for Kenyon Drake where if he gets the ball enough. I think, like you said, Kyle, right in that range where he's at, which is round 4, I think a guy like Drake can certainly make or break your fantasy team.
All right, Bob, I'll give you the final word on the Dolphins. Who's the best sleeper you've got here? Is it the tight end, Mike Gesicki, or Danny Amendola / Albert Wilson?
It's probably, look, I don't know how big a sleeper the Amendola Wilson / Wilson is. They're still going awfully late, but Gesicki's going even later. And talking to people in Miami, his problem is going to be, sharing that role. He is not great blocking. He is not great in pass protection, but he is great in the red zone. And if you listen to people who cover that team on a daily basis talk about, how good he's looked as in that role, I think he's the big, huge sleeper to me.
All right, if you've made it this far, I promise you the Patriots are close, but there's one more team we've got, the Buffalo Bills, who, according to Justin, may be looking up a little bit. Josh Allen, many people predicted him to be a bust from day one. Now it looks at least like he could cobble together something of a quality rookie year. With that being said, Justin, who is the receiver you're targeting here?
Do I have to? Gun to my head.
That's an option on the show sheet. Is there one?
It's probably Corey Coleman. We want to see what Coleman can do. I think it's a long time waiting. It's been a couple of years. He's had some injuries. I talk about geographical relocations. That might be the case here for Corey Coleman. Highly regarded coming out of college. I'll tell you what, it's probably not going to be Kelvin Benjamin, although it could be. He swelled up like a tick. We saw some success with what he did with Cam Newton. Zay Jones. I don't know what the hell happened with him in that hotel room a few months ago, but it's a bleak offense. It really is outside of LaShawn McCoy, and of course I like me some Charles Clay, but it's wide receiver standpoint, it's Corey Coleman. I like the relocation, but push comes to shove, I don't like any of them.
You give me Kelvin Benjamin in the double-digit rounds all day long. I'll take that. I'm happy with that. Big target in the red zone. Doesn't need to have all the separation, especially if it is the young Mr. Allen, a quarterback not known for his great accuracy. Although, Kelvin Benjamin is apparently used to that. It should be no problem for him. I just think that's a great price. I don't know. Corey Coleman will be, busy tending to his sneaker collection. I don't know. It's the only receivers I'm interested there right now are Benjamin and Charles Clay, the tight end, and I think the price is reasonable on both of them. I'd need to see a hell of a lot more from Corey Coleman, like catching the ball with his hands as opposed to his face mask. That would be a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, I originally had with A.J. McCarron out of the picture, do you have interest in Josh Allen? Of course, now we know A.J. McCarron did not break his collarbone. I'm guessing it was a hair on the screen. Someone looked at the x-ray and thought, yeah, that's broken. Oh, no. No, it's good. You're fine. But now,
you're all right.
Now he's starting for now it is looking like preseason week 3. Josh Allen will be starting regardless. With that being the rehearsal game, it looks like Josh Allen will be their quarterback in week 1, at least the favorite now. Any interest in taking him in redraft or even best ball?
No.
Awesome. Moving on. Is the LaShawn McCoy volume, Bob, is the volume that we can expect him to get since they do have a rookie quarterback? It would help to give him assistance in the run game, and he may be their best or second best pass catcher. Is that volume worth the risk if this offense is too bad to support him, or are you still worried about legal trouble?
Okay, so on the legal trouble, I'm decreasingly concerned about that. There's a civil case that's gone on, and in the civil case, the victim doesn't even accuse him of being involved in the crime. She's accusing him of removing the security cameras from his house, which she lived in. He just recently had her successfully evicted through a court procedure. This just sounds like there's been a lot going on there. And I think we're at the point now where you would expect kind of a Zeke or Brady-esque kind of next year if something's going to come of this. That's my feeling right now. Look, it could change. I'm not saying you're totally without risk there. I think the bigger concerns are Cordy Glenn, Eric Wood, Richie Incognito being gone, the lack of a high-end passing game, a young quarterback. All those things are concerned. But look at, he's still in the, just outside the second round, early third round ADP. I could live with that. I can live with that. I can think, look, we thought he was not going to, we thought he was going to be the whole offense last year. And he was, and it was not so bad. I think he's a guy that I can live with. It's not ideal, but if I get to that point in the draft where I'm in the third round and I'm kind of going, oh wow, I'm hurting a little bit at running back, I think I could give him a shot.
Yeah, he's in round 3. I think we'd like to pay a little less for him at this point. We talked about how he's 30 now, but he did log the third most carries he's had over the span of his career last season. So, he had 330 touches. He's heavily involved in the passing game, but again, there's damage to the offensive line. There's not a lot of complementary pieces. You have a rookie quarterback. At what point does the bottom fall out for LaShawn McCoy? So we're paying for the volume. Are we going to see a 25-year-old LaShawn McCoy? I don't think so. And I think it would be hard for him to do that, given the offense that he's playing in.
All right, Bob, we know how Justin feels about Charles Clay. If you go back and listen to our Bold Predictions episode featuring Mike Clay, you'll hear how he feels, and let me tell you it's good. Are you as high or even close to Justin on Charles Clay? Because you did say that he's likely their best receiver. Is the volume worth what you're paying?
Sure. I think the ADP is not, I think it is reasonable. You're talking about a guy, well into the double-digit rounds. I could roll with him. The concern for him always in the past has been, he misses a lot of practice time. He's had kind of a chronic knee condition. He claims this year that he has made strides in that regard through nutrition. I think that is possible to get yourself to heal yourself and take care of inflammation and things like that could be ongoing issues. So if that's the case, if he's really able to stay healthy, and it sounds like he's been practicing normally all so far this summer, so yeah, I think he's a value play at a position where there's a hell of a lot of value plays. So it depends on what you want. I don't think he's a high upside guy, but I think he's a solid producer.
All right, finally moving to the Patriots. Justin, our resident New England expert, we all know how good Tom Brady is, but where does this translate in your fantasy ranking?
You're still going to have to pay a premium for Tom Brady. I would have him comfortably in the top 5. I think it's Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and then Tom Brady. And we can, or you can lump in the Deshaun Watsons and the Wentzes of the world. But they have lost a lot on that offense. We'll dig into that more when we talk about different positions. But he is 41 years old. You lost Nate Solder to the Giants. What are your expectations for Tom Brady? 32 touchdowns, 8 picks last year. We know that he diets well. There is a disconnect in New England. Don't ask me exactly what it is, but there's some turmoil with Jimmy Garoppolo being out of the equation. I think any way you carve it, you have to have Tom Brady as a top 5 quarterback in redraft.
Of course you do. And, I know Justin speaks from the fan perspective, so some of his concerns are totally unfounded because he's a fan. Look, the thing that gets me about the whole Brady scenario here is he's old, yet they did nothing to find a replacement, right? I mean, I don't think they're as worried about it as the rest of us are. So, and it seems to me the Patriots' track record in terms of personnel, certainly the quarterback has been rock solid ever since the day they drafted Tom Brady in the 800th round of whatever draft that was. So, look, I'm fine. I could roll with Tom Brady all day. I do think there's one interesting thing my friend Matthew Berry over at ESPN pointed out. Tom Brady not good at the end of the year. Great, gets you to the playoffs. Maybe he hasn't been the best guy when you're in the playoffs. And so that's kind of interesting, whether it's the fact that the Patriots maybe shift their game plans a little bit or if he actually has an actual downturn. Numbers suggest that he is not as good the final 4 weeks of the season as he is the previous 12.
All right, moving on to the biggest piece in fantasy that you have to pay for here, Rob Gronkowski. What is his ceiling, Justin?
You're paying a Rob Gronkowski premium, and it's the second round. And one thing about Rob Gronkowski is he's hurt constantly. He is the best tight end in the NFL, not just because he has those Mickey Mouse hands, gloves, but he's a blocker and he's a nightmare of a matchup. I get the allure with Rob Gronkowski because of the shortage of weaponry from Tom Brady. You asked about his ceiling, Kyle. His ceiling is probably 80 catches, 1,100 yards, and 10 to 12 touchdowns. He finished tight end 2 last season behind Travis Kelce. Do I want to pay a round 2 premium for Rob Gronkowski? No, I don't, because he is a monumental liability, and he's missed over 25 games over the last few seasons. He's a guy that just cannot stay on the field consistently, and it's discouraging when you pay a round 2 premium for any player. But you'd be foolish, I think, and believe me, there are industry folks that absolutely loved Rob Gronkowski this season. You're getting wide receiver 1 numbers potentially out of him, maybe, but the price is too high for Gronk. He's the centerpiece of this offense. Again, major fantasy liability, and it's a premium.
He's a centerpiece of this offense, and he's a major liability. Go back to the ho-hos, Justin. Now that you've called me foolish, let me school you up, son.
Yeah.
So we've got Rob Gronkowski, who has missed 26 of 96 games over the last 6 seasons.
Yep.
So even with the missed time, he still leads all tight ends in receiving yardage and touchdowns receptions since 2014. He also sits second among tight ends in fantasy points during that same span, and he has 4 top 5 seasons since 2012. He's not the first tight end off the board in your drafts. Don't be afraid to take him. I'm taking him in the second round. Maybe that makes me foolish. We'll see. I'm injury agnostic. I tend to – this just in. Football is a collision sport. Guys get hurt every damn week. Do I worry every time Gronkowski falls on his ass that he's going to not get up? Yes. The physics of the game don't work in his favor. He's a huge man who moves incredibly fast. But when he is up in the locked and upright position, he is the most dangerous fantasy weapon in the NFL, and I want that while it's going. See, the thing about season-long fantasy football is it's kind of like the daily game. You have to win the positional matchups each and every week. As my friend Sigmund Bloom would remind, the only guy who would draft Gronk earlier than me, by the way, is Bloom, who would probably consider a first-round pick on him, or a late first-round pick on him. I think this is just a case where you want a guy who can win you that weekly matchup every week he's on the field. And because the tight end position is so fluid, or it's a C, perhaps a mediocrity.
That's right.
that you can, look, you have to mitigate when you take these kind of risks with players. Just like if you want to draft Jordan Reed, just like if you want to draft Tyler Eifert, there are ways to mitigate this risk. I don't know, maybe, based on the people I'm talking to in New England, Jacob Hollister is a guy who will mitigate that risk if something happens to Gronk for zero money or zero investment. So there's always ways to mitigate risk at this position. I want a guy who's been a frontline player. Look, is Travis Kelce maybe a safer play? Maybe. Does he have the same upside as Gronk? Not yet demonstrated, but maybe. But they're going around the same price range. And if you gave me a choice between the two, it'd be Gronk every single time. I'm not afraid to take Kelce. I tend to take him if I miss out on Gronk in the second round, and I've got plenty of Gronk in the second round. Fool that I am. I think you want one of those. I think that top tier, the tier of two, as we would call it, is something I want a piece of, and I'm fine taking him. And Justin can call me a fool all day. I still like Justin.
No, you're paying for upside. And I suppose when it comes to Gronk, I'm scared money at the poker table.
So Justin, who remembers the guy who came in second in his league? Who remembers that guy?
Sure.
Other than that guy.
Yeah, unless he chops the money with a lot, you'll see that a lot.
Exactly.
Let's split the money. But you're right.
Yeah, I think one point to be made is that Gronk definitely going in the second round. MFL 10 ADP this month has him 21st overall, but the lowest he's been taken is 33rd. That's well into the third round. I think whether or not you like Gronk, some people will just say, I'm not drafting tight end early, and that just having that heuristic in your mind will easily eliminate all those times, especially if you draft at high volume, all those times you can get him slipping into the third. I have not had a time where I'm in the third round and he's there and I don't take him. Even though I'm a little more Justin hesitant in the second, but just even if you're not willing to pay that premium, if he falls, don't use that heuristic of just eliminating early tight ends. And I think that can bring us to the receivers here, not as flashy, but we've got Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan. We'll have Edelman missing games due to suspension. Can Chris Hogan fill in and become a value, or do you expect Julian Edelman to take over when he comes back, Bob?
Yeah, I expect Julian Edelman to be Julian Edelman when he gets back, assuming the knee is sound and he feels good. It's kind of a little bit worrisome that he said the knee wasn't quite where he thought it was because it was a very early injury, right? It was, before the season. So I expected it to be, running full speed, maybe sandbagging. The Chris Thompson now sandbag style is maybe in vogue. But assuming he's back at full speed by week 5, week 6, he'll move right back in as what he was. I think in the interim, Chris Hogan has demonstrated great chemistry with Tom Brady. That's what matters there. That's one of the things that makes Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman what they are. Right? It makes James White what he is. If you have that connection with Tom Brady, and Chris Hogan has that. Chris Hogan's problem also fragile, like the Gronk. And it's a concern, but again, I try not to draft out of fear of injuries. I try to say, okay, I'm drafting a guy with great upside who often gets hurt. I need a plan in place to replace him if he does. But part of the advantage of guys not named Gronk who are injury risk is you get a great bargain price on most of them. And that would be the case. I think Hogan's a pretty good value right now.
Justin, speaking of value, we've got 2 running backs who people believe can make a big difference for their fantasy teams. Recently, Rex Burkhead has actually climbed ahead of Sony Michel in MFL 10 ADP, likely due to Sony Michel's injury. Rex Burkhead also injured, but it seems much less severe. Who are you taking here?
It's going to be Sony Michel every time. I mean, you lose Dion Lewis, who was a top 15 running back in fantasy land last year. Bob says this all the time. Head coaches and coaching staffs, they know more than we do. There's a reason why Sony Michel was drafted as early as he was. Now, they missed on Lawrence Maroney, but I think there's a reason why they drafted Sony Michel. He has had some fumble issues, which is a real issue in New England because if you can't hang on to the football, you're going to be on the bench real quick. I do like Sony Michel. We don't know what Rex Burkhead is. I think he's one of these shifty players. We saw him in Cincinnati for several years. He can be lined up in the slot. I don't know that his ceiling is high at all. He missed 6 games last season. It's Sony Michel every single time. And if he can kind of take over that Dion Lewis role, he's going to be special, and you're getting him at a steal right now.
Yeah, I think this is something we could agree on. I'm not as enthralled with Burkhead as the world. And it worries me a little bit. I don't know that I'm that enthralled with Sony Michel. And in the end, again, being the cheapskate, maybe I take the guy who I'm getting in the double-digit rounds, James White, who I have a pretty good feeling of what he's going to be. And like maybe early in the season when there is no Julian Edelman, maybe he's a guy that helps carry that receiving load. We've seen him be a viable factor. Look, it's hard to start any of those guys, any given week not knowing what the game plan is. But I think Michel is the guy that if you maybe take one of the early guys, I'd prefer him. We'll see how the health is here as the season draws nearer. I just have a hard time with Burkhead. I have trust issues with him at this point. There's no doubt what he's done when he's been in there and healthy, right? I mean, I won't deny that. I just, I don't know. It's the Gordian knot of NFL backfields. I struggle to untie it, and it concerns me.
Let me real quick. I mean, I also think that Jeremy Hill is going to have a role too. I mean, it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo each week. But Jeremy Hill, look, 25 years old, and he's had 29 rushing touchdowns over the last 4 seasons. It didn't work out in Cincinnati last year, but he's not old. And if you saw the way they used LeGarrette Blount a couple years ago, it was a season for the ages, 18 touchdowns. So if Hill is used in that banger role, I mean, it's ambiguous, gentlemen. I'm redundant with that word, but look, Jeremy Hill could be a real sleeper while we talk about Rex Burkhead and we talk about Sony Michel. I think every one of these running backs we're mentioning is going to have a good week. It's just the way Bill sees it. And like you said, Bob, give me James White. I think he's the only focal point of stability in that backfield, and he has been for some time. So there's trust with James White, and it's a name you don't really hear. We keep hearing about Sony Michel. We keep hearing about Rex Burkhead, but nobody wants to talk about James White.
Bob, any interest in any of the ancillary receiving pieces, your Eric Deckers or Kenny Britts?
When can I get Cordero Patterson?
You can have him. You can take him anytime.
You can have him.
I can have him as a free agent, and that's probably what I'd be doing. Nothing. Philip Dorsett's, raising some, seems to be having a good camp and is maybe, climbing up the list of trusted targets to some degree. So, it sounds like maybe they want to try him in the slot a little bit. He's basically an outside guy. So, I don't know if I'm, I have huge expectations, but he's generating a lot of positive buzz. Talked to Christopher Price from Boston Sports Journal the other day, and he mentioned that as well. And I've heard that from multiple reporters there. So, still not enough to get me on board the Dorsett train, so to speak. So, not really.
Philip Dorsett was T.Y. Hilton 2.0. When the Colts drafted him, I thought there was some concerns that T.Y. Hilton was going to screw, so they were going to find his replacement. They're almost mirror images in terms of stature. So I think Dorsett's an interesting guy to talk about because if he's any semblance of what we've seen out of T.Y. Hilton in Indianapolis, it could be a beautiful thing here. And I think that the Patriots yearn for kind of that deep threat, and they are hurting, as we've talked about this show, in terms of pass catches outside of Rob Gronkowski. We don't know what Chris Hogan is. I don't.
Yeah.
All right, that will bring us to a close for this week. Next week, we will have the NFC East bringing our summer road trip to a close. One more week after that, one more show after that, the week 1 preview, and then it is full swing in the season. So stay tuned. Season is close. And to stay up to date with all of your Football Diehards pod news, follow Bob at Football Diehard, Justin at Justin Lonero, and myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for tuning in.